Hello, everybody. Recording live from somewhere.
Welcome everybody back to the Pursuit Pod. I'm your host, Calvin Lymper. And we've just had a crazy past 24 hours. It really is just the fallout of most recent sports events, namely the NBA trade deadline is coming up, and we've already had some deals that are starting to shape the way that's going to end up turning out. So without further ado, just like usual, let's get right into it with Roundball Rock. Lot to discuss here. So it all started yesterday, midday. I was doing some homework when I get a notification on my phone about Jaren Jackson Jr. going to the Utah Jazz. And we see this trade. He gets traded to the Jazz for John Conchar, Jock Landale, Vince Williams. And they ended up getting back Walter Clayton, Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, Georges Niang, and 3 first-round picks. Now, for these first-round picks, you expect this to kind of be a weird deal for Memphis. Especially the fact that they're trying to rebuild here and they're getting rid of picks. But then you look into these picks and it's their most favorable 2027 pick, the Lakers 2027 pick, and the 2031 Phoenix Suns pick. So not a lot of value in that. But at the same time, it's basically Jaren Jackson Jr. for 3 first-round picks. And then you got the rest. So there's a lot of thoughts on this trade, and a lot of it has kind of made more sense over time. Again, definitely a John Morant trade's coming up next here with this news of the Jaren Jackson trade. We talked before about how Jaren Jackson's been having an off year, and his production's just been going down and down as the years go by. And so if they want to really start up this rebuild, they really want to get rid of him. And there's just so many limitations when it comes to him for the Grizzlies, and just the fact that they just need to clear house here. But the thing that you got to note here is that they're getting rid of Jaren Jackson and Jock Landale. So my question is, who is their big man right now? Are they really going to rely on Zach Edey? Are they really going to rely on whoever else their centers are? Who is the real center? Who is the real big man depth out in Memphis now with Jaren Jackson out and even Jock Landale's out? There's just definitely not a lot of short-term success there in Memphis, which I guess is what they figured would happen. Now they have a little more picks and a little more leeway to kind of begin their rebuild here. But then at the same time, you got a win-now move from the Utah Jazz, which I just find so odd because they're going to be 15-35 right now. They're nowhere near even close in this really stacked West, even making it to the playoffs, maybe even making it to the play-in. But you look at this Utah lineup for next year, and just for the years incoming, you have Walker Kessler, Larry Markin, and now Jaren Jackson Jr. And then you got Keontae George, Ace Bailey. There's a team that's building out there in Utah, and it's they might not have success the rest of the year. Maybe Jaren Jackson doesn't even play the rest of the year, honestly. I've been hearing rumors about that, saying that Jaren Jackson Jr. might not even suit up for the Grizzlies, kind of like how Trae Young may never suit up for the Washington Wizards for the rest of the year. So my question is just, what is the goal for Utah here? Are they really trying to make a win-now move right now, this late in this season? And when it comes to the big men depth in Utah, you give away first for Jaren Jackson. Walker Kessler's now a question mark. Hopefully they retain him, but you would have a really nasty big man depth core there. Ace Bailey's going to keep improving. Not to mention Kyle Filipowski's still out there. So there's a lot of good things to come for the Utah Jazz here out of this trade, and there's just a lot of questions for both sides. And again, Memphis, they're going to be a bad team for the next 2-3 years. They're going to be pulling a Thunder where they're just going to trying to get as many picks as they can, try to rebuild through there. You really gutted your entire bigs core there in Memphis, and you have Walter Clayton now as your backup point guard. I think Utah fleeced Memphis value-wise, and I think this is just move one to something larger for Utah. Because, again, they're trying to go win now, I think, or at least they're going to go win ASAP, win as soon as possible here. So, a lot of questions with that, but I can maybe see where both sides are coming from on that topic and on that value there. So, we'll see. again, Keontae George, Ace Bailey. Then you got, Larry Markkinen, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler. You're going to have someone who's 7 foot playing small forward probably. So we'll see what happens there in Utah. But the biggest story of last night happened around 9 p.m., and that was James Harden to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs gained Harden to jolt their offense. They are right now the 8th best offense in the league. And there's a lot of question marks here. Again, Clippers fans kind of left in the dark as to why Harden wants to leave Los Angeles. Things were going well. They've been on a really good streak. I've talked about that in past episodes. And Harden's been, he's never going to leave his prime, man. He's still hunting there. He's still got 2-3 years probably left before he's either retired or just absolutely washed. And people always like to, get rid of this James Harden narrative and kind of throw him away in the wastebasket, saying that, he can't perform in the playoffs, that he's not as clutch as he was before, that he's not, an MVP anymore. But, he was a catalyst for this Clippers team. And he ranks 11th in the NBA's equivalent of WAR, like the baseball stat WAR. Right now he's the 88th percentile in points per. Right now he's the 88th percentile in points per shot attempt. He's 91st percentile in drawing fouls. And there's still a big age difference there between him and Darius Garland, the guy who was traded for the Cavaliers. And I mean, again, the Cavs are lending away an all-star point guard, a guy who's kind of proven himself to be a mainstay here in Cleveland. But now you got to talk about Darius Garland a little ways. Yes, he is valuable to Cleveland. Yes, he is this and that. But the Cavs are 17-8 without Garland this season. And Garland's actually having probably his worst year since his rookie year this season so far. He's had lows in three-point percentage, usage rate declined, and not to mention, his big hit contract that he has. That's going to be something rocky that the Clippers are going to have to pick up. And the Cavs have been outscored by 3 points per 100 possessions with him on the court. So there's just, and I don't think that this is a bad trade for the Clippers. Again, it's James Harden. I know that that's always, a touchy subject, but getting rid of James Harden for Darius Garland, there's worse ways that this could have gone. There's worse ways, and Darius Garland is still a good player. He's still an all-star. He still can score. He still can be a team player. He still can be the guy on the team that kind of riles everyone up. And he's young. He's only, 26, 27? I think that he's a fine replacement for James Harden. Again, it's James Harden, and his name is just itself kind of carries that aura of just you can't really get rid of him that easily. I mean, maybe in past years, the Daryl Morey is a liar deal. Maybe you can get rid of him for that. But I don't know. You still have Chris Dunn, Bogdan Bogdanovic on the bench behind him. Not to mention that this actually makes the Clippers a lot younger, which is kind of their biggest ordeal throughout the season, after they signed Chris Paul, after they signed Bradley Beal in the offseason. It's just been, a team, it's been a veteran house. It's been a nursing home out there. So to actually get some youth, and I know it's James Harden, that's really the biggest thing about this trade and the thing about this narrative and this story is it's James Harden. You're replacing James Harden with a guy who hasn't been that proven, I guess, compared to how proven James Harden has been, especially with James Harden kind of being on a heater recently in LA, and really just his whole time in LA on the Clippers has been really good, especially this past year and especially in their recent streak of winning games, and he could have been an all-star, and we'll get more into that later, but I think the biggest thing driving this James Harden trade request, which apparently came out this morning that he didn't actually request a trade, but I think that's BS. I wonder if there is a potential suspension upcoming for the Clippers, maybe for Kawhi Leonard for the aspiration deal, just because that's been kind of left in the dark. And James Harden wanting to leave the Clippers is just so out of nowhere. And it's just so, I don't know, it's so polarizing to the league right now. And it's just, there's always been that thing in the background of when will Kawhi and the Clippers be in trouble for this? Because this was true tampering. This is true fraud in the NBA. I think that, honestly, I was worried that Kawhi was going to get his contract voided or maybe banned for the year, suspended for the year. So I wonder if they have this streak going, right? Right now, I think they won like 16 of the last 19. They've been on fire since the new year started. I think that there's going to be a Kawhi Leonard thing coming up. There's going to be some Kawhi Leonard news in that incident, that aspiration incident, especially with the whole Steve Ballmer thing. I think that didn't go away yet. I think that right after the All-Star break and after the trade deadline, they're going to enforce something, and I think that's why James Harden wanted to get out of there. And he wanted to, he realized that it was just purgatory there in LA with that kind of looming over them. So I think that he wanted to leave and go to a contender for right now, because the Cavs they're definitely boosted from this. Garland kind of has been something that, again, Donovan Mitchell, his usage rate has had to go extremely up, exponentially up. His minutes have gone exponentially up. And now you got James Harden coming in, and he's going to be able to kind of relieve him of that. He's going to add more scoring. He's going to use the pick and roll of Jared Allen and go with Evan Mobley, and they're going to be a much better team now. And I think that James Harden, he really is a valuable player there. And I just feel bad for Darius Garland. Also, to all my NBA meme fans, no more Sexland in Cleveland at all. Colin Sexton's been gone. Now Darius Garland's gone. All the remnants of that rebuilding Cavs team is now gone. And now we have Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, and Twin Towers down there in Ohio. So the team could be good. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to lead a good streak. And I think watch out for some Clippers news coming up. Maybe even more moves from them. And then you got probably the biggest question mark, maybe the second biggest question mark behind the James Harden trade would be the Bulls and their moves. They're sending Vucevic to the Boston Celtics for more guards. This comes after the Mike Conley, Jaden Ivey trade, which they got both of those players for basically free. The Wolves gave away cap space to make the Giannis trade easier, is my theory, and that's why I think they got rid of Mike Conley for absolutely nothing, for maybe a luxury tax hopeful situation there. I think that they're just trying to clear cap space in that move to make the Giannis trade easier. We're going to go into that in a few minutes. But I mean, this trade for Vucevic for Anthony Simons, it brings good depth to Boston, big man wise, and they will miss Simons scoring until Tatum is back. But now you got to look at this guard depth for Chicago, and it's just overly stacked. It looks like you ever do a My League or simulation or whatever, My NBA now it's called, simulation, and you're trying to control all teams and try and do random trades between them. And then you end up just having one team that just is stockpiled with one position. That's literally what Chicago's dealing with right now. They have Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Anthony Simons, Io, Trey Jones, now Jaden Ivey, who's a good player, Mike Conley. I think there's definitely a Kobe White or Io deal coming in. I think maybe both of them might be gone. And now they got rid of Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter goes to the Pistons, and that is just, an absolute steal for Detroit. And I know that Kevin Huerter's kind of been a little low-key this season. He's only made 31% of his three-pointers this year, but he still lies between the 70th and 90th percentiles of assist percentage among wings in the NBA, and the Pistons are sitting at 20th in the NBA for three-point percentage, despite being the top of the East right now and trying to really go for a championship. So Huerter is going to bring in the tools they need for their weak spot. And with Jaden Ivey's kind of injury history, this is a good move for Detroit. This is a good steal for Detroit, honestly. They got Dario Saric to be probably another trade asset, or probably even just to be released, to be cut, which is a shame because I love Dario, but I don't know if we're going to see him play. But I mean, for the Bulls, losing Huerter will sting, but now they just have so many different options. Again, I think the fact that they brought in Anthony Simons, they brought in Jaden Ivey, I think that both Kobe White and Io are both gone. At the same time, they have no big man depth. They're going to be definitely shooting for a big man out of an Io trade, probably a better guard out of a White trade, I would assume. But I mean, like sure, Jalen Smith, Patrick Williams, Buzelis, who else? Who else do you have there in Chicago to fill that big man role? The remains of Zach Collins. Good player, but come on. That's not going to bring you anywhere if you're a Bulls fan. And now some rumors that have kind of been put on the back burner just because the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade of yesterday really sparked everything. It kind of woke everyone up. I think that it was really just like this past month has really just been the Cold War in the NBA, and that comes from just who's going to make the first move. Which of the big trade block candidates, being Jaren Jackson, probably someone on the Kings, probably Kobe White. Which one out of those guys is going to be the first tower to fall here? And it was Jaren Jackson, and then that's when every other team and their trades they kind of had on hold until one of the stars goes. The dominoes just fell one after another. And then, again, I think today, probably either during recording this video or after it's released to hopefully all of you, we're probably going to get a Ja trade. We're probably going to get, just for the sake of fun trade deadline, a Giannis trade. And Giannis is officially moving on from Milwaukee, at least reportedly. Recent quotes say that he's like, I'm just committed to, I want to be here and retire here as a Buck and win another championship here in Milwaukee. And that's kind of my goal. But come on, man, you're not going to be a Buck by the end of the offseason. And poor Shams, and I'm not the biggest Shams guy. I'm a Woj guy. I'm always going to be a Woj guy. I know he's retired now, but Shams has just really been trying to push this Giannis thing for the past few days. He puts out new tweets every day saying Giannis he doesn't want to be in Milwaukee, and then the next day he's like, the new rumors are that Giannis is either going to be gone from Milwaukee either in the trade deadline or in the offseason. Then it's like, Giannis will definitely be gone in the offseason, by the offseason, if not before then. It's kind of like the same dead horse you're beating over and over again, Shams. Woj would never tease us like this. That's all I'm going to say. Woj would never tease us like this. So, Shams, you gotta just let the story breathe a little bit, in my opinion. I think there's just so many rumors coming out about that. So now we have a bunch of teams in the running here. Golden State, Miami, New York, Minnesota is seriously pushing for something again. I think they got rid of cap space for this deal. Now, Philly is the wild card team here. So, read an article from Zach Cram and Kevin Pelton from ESPN and some NBA insiders discussing different trade ideas they've heard or that could make sense cap space-wise. So the first offer on the table would be the Warriors getting Giannis and Miles Turner for Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, pods, and picks. And there's a lot of different possibilities here with a Giannis trade. For this Warriors offer, this could be the go for Milwaukee to tank. Again, getting rid of Miles Turner and Giannis. And they get a lot of more picks, plus with Butler being out, it's just basically the green light to just tank the rest of the season if they're not already. And I actually heard a report about Draymond Green. He wants to take the trade for Giannis to return to Golden State in free agency. But now we're hearing that Draymond Green thinks that he's gone out of Golden State. He's saying that he's kind of accepted that he's probably played his last game in a Warriors uniform and that he's willing to leave. He probably thinks that he's going to leave. So that'll be interesting to see if Draymond Green gets thrown into a possible trade upcoming. Plus, this trade offer would solve the Kuminga trade request issue. This would be the last chance for Stephen Curry to compete probably with Giannis with him. So I don't think it's likely. I don't think that the Bucks are going to be willing to pick up Jimmy Butler. I don't even know what valuable picks the Warriors would have right now. But second trade, which again I think is kind of beating a dead horse overall, but this is an ambitious 3-team trade. The Knicks get Giannis and Jrue Holiday. The Blazers get Cat, Mikal Bridges, Deuce McBride, and the Bucks get Jeremy Grant, Matisse Thybulle, Yabusele, and some picks. I think that this is really just a match made in heaven for anyone who really loves narratives in the NBA. Again, with Jrue Holiday, Giannis going away, and then the Bucks just getting all these random players like Jeremy Grant. But this is probably a good case scenario for the Bucks. I mean, they returned the picks that they gave away for the Dame trade. that comes back to them. This would be a big boost to the Blazers. They're trying to actually make a playoff run right now, and they're actually a solid team. This gets them off Jeremy Grant's huge contract. This really just feels like the Bucks cleaning up for the Dame trade. Again, I don't think this is likely. My pick for what is probably most likely when it comes to these trade offers would be the Miami Heat. In my mind, I'm pretty set in stone that Giannis is a part of the Miami Heat by now. I think that's just the most likely landing spot for the trade deadline, at least. Coming to the offseason, it might be a little different, but the offer presented by Pelton is that the Heat get Giannis, the Bucks get Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, Kel'el Ware, and picks. And Tyler Hero is a proven player. He's been to the finals. And Ware is a rising center, and I don't even think Spo likes him that much, so this would be something that the Heat are willing to do. Again, Jaime Jaquez could be thrown in a deal without be giving up too much to keep that contending title. At the same time, get rid of Hero, and it's just kind of, it's Norman Powell, Giannis, and Adebayo, and I don't know how strong that team is per se, but I think this is the most likely trade to happen if a Giannis trade happens by the trade deadline. Lastly, you get the Wolves offer, which again, I think is unlikely, but this would be a really, really fun wild card, especially now that I think it might be a little more possible now they got rid of Mike Conley. The Wolves get Giannis and Gary Trent Jr. The Raptors are in there. They get Cole Anthony, Jaden McDaniels. The Bucks get RJ Barrett, Rob Dillingham, Julius Randle, Terrence Shannon Jr., and picks. Now, this is just an unrealistic trade all around by these NBA insiders, and I think that the Wolves, lack assets besides players to give up to the Bucks, and I don't know if they're going to be willing to give top-end talent like Jaden McDaniels in a trade. I could see them getting rid of Julius Randle, Rob Dillingham, but what do they have to offer? I don't know if they can top an offer from the Heat or the Knicks or the Warriors, but it would definitely be a really fun thing to see Giannis in Minnesota, and probably the most unlikely thing, but I think that it's a little more possible, again, with the context of the Mike Conley trade. I think there's definitely a possibility for this to go on and this to happen. Now we have just a few random NBA news, kind of go out of the trade deadline talk. Japanese guard Yuki Kawamura is putting up sneaky numbers for the Chicago Bulls. Keep your eyes out for this little Asian guard. So he's 5'7", and he infamously won a jump ball over a 10-inch height difference. And he dropped 6 points back-to-back games, including the loss to the Heat with a 6-point, 6-assist, 6-rebound game, which is the mark of the beast. So maybe it's a bad sign, but Kawamura he's grinding out there in Chicago, and it's you love to see it. You love to see it. Cooper Flagg put up 49 points in a thrilling loss to the Charlotte Hornets. Right now, he is leading the Rookie of the Year race, and finally he's woken up after kind of a rocky beginning to the season. This 49 points is actually the most points by a teenager in the NBA, in NBA history, over LeBron, over Anthony Edwards. And actually, he joins Anthony Edwards and LeBron as the only three players in the NBA to have multiple 40-point games as a teenager. And the most exciting thing about this Charlotte Mavs game was that he battled his former teammate, Con Knuppel, who's also trying to fight in for that surprise Rookie of the Year winner. And Con Knuppel had 34 points himself with 8 threes, and he's just been a lights-out shooter. And there's just been a fun little faux rivalry going on there between the Hornets and the Mavs, between Flagg and Knuppel. Now we got two things about two teams that I want to discuss, and that would be two sides of a bad coin, I guess is the best way to put it. The Nets lost 130-77 to the Pistons the past Sunday, and they're sitting at 13th in the East right now. And it just looks worse and worse every game. They turn the ball over, 25 points in the loss. The offense is absolutely nothing without Michael Porter Jr. This is their third loss of at least 37 points in this short stretch. They're consistently having slow starts, and they gave up 36 points in the paint to Denver in the first half alone. None of their 5 first-round picks are really clicking. Michael Porter Jr. and Igor Denham are really the only bright spots in this Nets team. And I mean, Igor still has spots to grow as a young player, as a defender, as a pure scorer. And so the Nets are just, I was having a discussion with my buddy talking about, we were like, oh, there's not really going to be any far and away bad teams in the NBA. the next few years. And I was like, yeah, Brooklyn Nets have their 5 first-round picks are, you're kind of going 1 for 5 there. And when your leading guy is Michael Porter Jr., I don't think he's going to be able to lead a team. And I'm being proven right, I guess. So, yeah, there's that. And they just look terrible. And there's just so many lowlights coming out of that Brooklyn Nets. And it really just, the Nets never changed, man. They had Kyrie and KD and James Harden like 3 years ago. What happened to that? What happened to that 3 years ago stretch? On the other side, you got the Charlotte Hornets. They're riding a 7-game win streak, and they're just looking like a much more improved team after that slow start. They matched the all-time record for road differential in a month in January with a plus 151, which actually matched the NBA final competitor Miami Heat in 2011, who also had that 151 plus point differential. I mean, again, we mentioned Conkin up earlier. He's just shooting the lights out, 42.7% from three-point land. They found their lineup featuring him, him, LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller. They have Moussa Diaby and Miles Bridges as bruisers on the outside. And the Hornets just overall, they've just improved a lot this season compared to last. So they improved 17.5% in three-point percentage from last year, which is actually, right now they're sitting at the third in the league for three-point percentage. They added 19.3% for free throw percentage, which they're now at 16th in the league. They're plus 10% in both assists and points scored. And the key is their young core. Again, LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Conkin. It's a really good young core. They're 23-28 right now. I think this early hole might be a little too much to dig out of, just like the Clippers, but I think this Hornets team could be dangerous come 2027. I think them and the Utah Jazz are going to be a very dangerous up-and-coming young team that's going to kind of come out of nowhere and just start clicking, and they're going to improve a lot even into next year. So I think there's a lot of excitement coming out of there, and it's just fun to watch, young teams like this kind of come up. So now let's move on to the 4th and 4. And finally, we are T-minus X amount of days until the Super Bowl. So it's time for the long-winded Super Bowl prediction to come out. But first, just a little overview of the coaching carousel before we get out to that. So Dable's officially in Tennessee as the offensive coordinator, as I said. And then we got the last 2 head coaching spots. Clint Kubiak to the Raiders head coach after the Super Bowl, and Mike LaFleur as the Cards head coach. And the most interesting thing I probably saw out of this coaching carousel and this cycle is there's no landing spots for Nate Scheelhaas or Davis Webb. And I think they're both going to be promoted to OC of their respective teams. So a lot of cool, fun excitement for those guys who are going to be future head coaches eventually. It's just bound to happen, maybe even in the next cycle, especially Scheelhaas. I think he's going to come out of nowhere, especially if the Rams have a good year next year. And I mean, they're riding with Matt Stafford. He's the MVP this year. It's going to be good. It's going to be good for them. Kubiak for the Raiders, I love that. Mike LaFleur is the Cards. Again, Cardinals is like the worst spot you can be in the league because they're the level of team that's just like, they're never at the very bottom and they're never at the very top and they're never really in the playoffs. They're kind of just like the best of the worst, I guess. It's really just purgatory there. And Kyler Murray, they're going to have to figure that out too. So now let's get to the Super Bowl prediction that you all have been waiting for. So Seahawks-Patriots, we have a really good matchup here. It's going to be a blowout, in my opinion. I think that Seahawks win 31 to Patriots 13. The Seattle Seahawks should steamroll the Patriots. I mean, they're rolling with just an amazing defense that's just going to stop really the only good part of this Pats game this postseason with the run. And I think that Charbonnet being out for Seattle is not that big of a deal as it seems. People have been talking, that might swing into the New England's favor. I don't think so. Again, it really is all up to if Sam Darnold can just stay focused and if he'll see ghosts or not. But, I mean, he hasn't this postseason. He's played really good opponents. I don't think that he's going to just become a bad player out of nowhere just because it's the Super Bowl. But again, crazier things have happened. We've seen Nick Foles come out of nowhere and win a Super Bowl for the Eagles. So crazier things have happened. That definitely will happen. So I think the biggest name of the game for both teams, honestly, is just turnovers. And for New England, it's going to be ball security as well, because the Seattle defense is tough. They're a really tough defense, and I just don't see the Pats being able to capitalize off turnovers from Seattle. If there are any from Seattle, again, they're playing flawless football so far in this playoffs. And I think I see May throwing a crucial interception or two here, trying to get something going. And actually a quote from an article I read kind of predicting this game. The Patriots are averaging just 18 points per game this postseason, the fourth fewest by a team entering the Super Bowl, and the fewest since 1979. Two of the three teams in this stat went on to lose Super Bowl. So again, I'm just not sure if May can hold on again against another top defense. So I think this is going to be a blowout. I'll make a post upcoming, but I will say I believe that this is going to be a Seahawks just stomp all over the Patriots. But again, crazier things have happened. I'm rooting for Seattle personally, and I know me saying they're going to win 31-13 is probably going to mean that the Patriots come out of nowhere, score like 45, but the Patriots are being held down. I think that if the Seahawks can just score more than 20 in this game, which I think they're capable of, I think they win this game. So I'm not concerned, and I think that the Seattle Seahawks will be Super Bowl champions come next week when I speak to all of you again. Now, let's talk some hockey. Quick little segment for all of you, only a few topics. First off, most exciting thing this past week has been the Tampa Bay versus Boston Stadium Series game outdoors in Raymond James. Brian Hagel got things going for Tampa Bay at Raymond James with a quick goal, 11 seconds in, and then you blink and you miss it, and all of a sudden Tampa Bay is down 5-2 after Morgan Geekie, Alex Steves, Victor Arvidsson come out just firing for the Bruins. And then you got the game changer, which has been accredited to being what brought the big momentum shift of the game into account, and that's the goalie brawl. Vasilevsky and Jeremy Swayman go to center ice by themselves and duel in the first goalie fight in outdoor games history, as well as being the second in 6 years. After, last week we just talked about seeing an awesome goalie fight, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, but now it's happened again, and it's just... And then all of a sudden, again, you blink and you miss it, and all of a sudden, Tampa Bay wins in shootouts. So the Bruins just took penalty after penalty, and that led to 3 power play goals back-to-back-to-back for the Lightning, and then Nikita Kucherov tying the game halfway through the third period, and then the Lightning just win shootouts eventually, and it's just cinema. It's just cinema in an unusually wintry Tampa Bay this time of year, and the discussion on the table has been, is this the greatest outdoor game of all time for the NHL? One of the best regular season games of all time in the NHL? I'm not sure. I got to read more into that history, but a lot of cool stuff coming out of there in Tampa Bay. Now, the next topic I want to talk about is Vegas. They've been on a bad slump as of late. They've lost 7 of their last 8. And it's all been tied down to their incredible juxtaposition of period scoring. Before the Anaheim loss, Vegas ranked second most in the NHL for first period goals allowed. And then they ranked second fewest for third period goals allowed. So Vegas has just been stuck in this purgatory of bad first periods, and they just need, they need to force a surmounting comeback almost every single game. Coach Bruce Cassidy of Vegas said, quote, "We need to be a hell of a lot more competitive in front of our own net. It's a bit of what our identity was and what we changed a few pieces back there, but we can't lose that, and we still have a little." I mean, to be fair, Vegas has been dealing with injuries. The injury bug, just with Braden McNabb, William Karlsson, Colton Sissons all out, which takes away solid defensive production for the Knights. But you look on the outside, and they're still in a decent spot. They're still first in the Pacific solely because they're a game behind Edmonton despite being tied for points with them. I think they are susceptible to a collapse if you don't count this as a collapse already, but they're still ahead right now. And the Kraken right now are actually trailing 3 points behind them. And so now you have to look at what's next for the Vegas Golden Knights. And that would be they face the Canucks next, which should be a win. That should keep them at the top. The Canucks are they're selling their team right now. And then you have Los Angeles Kings, who are on the immediate outside of a wild card push. And you just need them to kind of they want to get into that wild card, but it's going to be a fight. And so I think that Kings-Vegas game is really going to be a determination of which team wants it more, especially with if Vegas will continue their slide here. So sorry about the short segments for both football and hockey, but a lot of stuff in the NBA has been going on. But we have a good Phanatic segment coming up for you guys, talking about the Philadelphia Flyers and then the Sixers and the Eagles. So Travis Konechny named the third star of the week by the NHL for his performances from January 26th to February 1st. And he's led the NHL in that week with 5 goals, 2 assists. He had the hat trick against Columbus, even though they lost. He was the only 3 scorers in that game. And all of a sudden, the Flyers are third to last in the Eastern Conference, the entire Eastern Conference, with 60 points after their win over Washington last night. And they're 8 or 10 points out of a wild card spot, only like 6 or 7 out of a Metro spot. So just what happened here? What happened here in Philadelphia? The last 3 weeks have been so pessimistic here. They've had 11 losses in their past 13 games. Dan Vladar says they are a confident group, and this is just a bad stretch of games. Rich Tocchet says that he says the team is just nervous. Why are the Flyers nervous? When bad things happens to this team, they have a bad loss, it just snowballs. Why can't they, again, with the Colorado win in the weeks past, they can't take a good thing and just continue on there? It really is just like a showing of anxiety from these Flyers. When bad things happen to Philadelphia, it just snowballs for them. I'm thinking it could be a lack of practicing due to a condensed schedule. Jordy Barstool on X says the fact that they hired Rick Tocchet in the first place should have told us that the Flyers have absolutely no idea what direction they're heading in. Tocchet has an awful track history for winning as a head coach, and he has no history of developing young players. So here, you got to take a step back and look at it. I mean, the Michkov thing has just been terrible, and even just the most recent press conferences he's had talking about it has just been awful. And there's been reduced minutes on ice. Again, this past Capitals win, Michkov had, I think, 15 minutes on ice, which is better. But there's just been very vocal disdain from Tocchet about Michkov. And maybe it's tough love just going too far. But I think that I'm just worried that it's going to drive Michkov out of Philly like he virtually did with the Vancouver collapse going on right now. Just airing out too much dirty laundry with the Flyers behind the scenes. And Tocchet just has too much of this tough atmosphere that he wants to promote. But dude, you're not Torts, bro. Like, you don't have the track history that he does. You don't have probably the intellectual knowledge about hockey like he does. I don't know if you can really do what he's been doing there. So one thing I do like about Tocchet, though, has been that he gives good opportunities to young guys like Denver Barkey, like Jamie Drysdale, Andre, Forrester out of the gate, and that's just really fun. But the biggest question for this past week is just, is this the same era of Orange that we weren't promised? We were promised it's going to be a new era. Briere is saying that they're still seeing a rebuild. They're still seeking this rebuild. They're not... Can we commit to one side of hockey or the other? And this is what happened last year, or at least in years past. We've been just trying to push for a playoff spot to the very last minute. When things don't go well, we seek for this rebuild, and we collapse. And I need to question when we're going to go all in. We could be buyers here. We get a good trade or two at this trade deadline, then we're going to be able to boost this season. But it has to happen now. It has to happen ASAP. It has to happen immediately. The salary cap increases in 2027, so maybe that's when we go all in. But we have a good core right now. Can we figure this out? We still got to get a better center. There needs to be a commitment to either rebuild or there needs to be a commitment to getting into the playoffs, because we're going to miss out on really good talent if we don't take one way or the other. If we don't take the playoff push side and get some good talent from trades, or if we don't take the rebuilding side and we get some good talent from the draft. Now, good news to end off the little Flyers segment would be that Porter Martone dropped a goal and 2 assists over Gavin McKenna and Penn State in a 6-3 win. And then in the outdoor game, he dropped 3 assists to lead to a 5-4 win over Penn State again. And that's probably the best thing that we can look for as Flyers fans, just to look forward to our future, and that we have Porter Martone waiting in the wings for us. So that's a good thing at least. Now for the Eagles, finally, all the questions have been answered. Sean Mannion hired as head coach, and Josh Grizzard hired as a pass game coordinator. Last week I talked about actually both these guys in depth, talking about how I thought that Sean Mannion was intriguing. Young talent, he was the offensive consultant in Green Bay, worked closely with Jordan Love, and even rising star Malik Willis is going to be one of the top free agents this offseason for a team that's trying to, rebuild their quarterback room. But then I even said that Josh Grizzard is also intriguing. He has exposure to working under Shanahan and McVay. Good pass game architect. The Buccaneers ranked third in the league under Grizzard as a passing game coordinator in 2024 for passing yards, and just had so much good structure that Patullo did not have for us. Even if he didn't have the best season last year as an offensive coordinator calling plays for the Bucs. But then just overall, this is going to be a really fun offensive coaching core. Honestly, Mannion's been around successful quarterbacks his entire career, whether playing or coaching them. Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Kirk Cousins, Russ. He understands different styles of playing. All those quarterbacks are just so much different in the way they play and the way they've been coached. And he understands how playbooks are molded around different quarterbacks. And he learned under Sean McVay, Clint Kubiak, Liam Cohen, etc. This is just new ideas in Philadelphia, and there's no ties to the Eagles. This is bringing the McVay-Shanahan offense to Philadelphia. More play action, more pre-snap motion, more RPOs, balanced offense, scheming players open. And plus, Sean Mannion has no tape against him. He has no tape as to what his scheme could be, which seemed bad for us because we have no clue how he does as a play caller. But this is good because this means that he's not going to lead a predictable offense, at least not yet. We'll see what happens when the season starts. I'm sure we're going to get fire Sean Mannion in 2 weeks when the season starts. But we're seeing an offense that no one knows about. We're seeing an offense that has yet to be deciphered, just like the Patullo offense was. Something that teams won't be able to, right out of the gates, know how to stop. And that was our biggest Achilles heel, especially later on down the line. So if Sean Mannion can just keep ideas fresh week to week, offer up good ideas, and plus if we can get Josh Grizzard going in there and, really architecting this thing, really making Jalen Hurts a top passer in the league, which he already is, but maybe the numbers don't add up to it, we're going to see something good here in Philadelphia. So I'm very happy about these hires. I think the Sean Mannion thing is a huge risk, but it's a risk that I, as a fan, am very willing to take. And I wish that we could have gotten Todd Monken as our offensive coordinator, or someone like that. But Sean Mannion, I think he could be here for a few years before he leaves, just because he's so unproven. And again, crazier things have happened, so maybe he does leave after a year. But as much as it sucks to the development of Jalen Hurts, if we have to go good coordinator, bad coordinator, good coordinator, bad coordinator, and we still win a Super Bowl out of it, I'll take it. Lastly, for the Phanatic, would be obviously the news that Paul George was suspended 25 games for violating the drug use policy of the NBA. It actually brings us closer to being under the luxury tax threshold. It might be a blessing in disguise because this cost him $11 million on his salary hit. And actually, we've been 3-0 since he's been suspended. So in 3 of those 25 games since he's been suspended, the Sixers are 3-0. So, and 2 of those games were blowouts. So right now, I'll take this news. As much as this sucks, as much as I don't like it. But to be fair, he took improper medicine for mental health reasons. He apologized to everybody. And PG has just been a great presence for this team. And he's actually living up to his money hits, at least this year. He scored 32 over the Bucks the other day. So the 76ers are 16-11 this year when he plays. And I think they're now 13-10 when he doesn't. So again, until those losses start hitting, then we'll be a little more panicky. But the Sixers are on a good way. They're on their way. Dominic Barlow stepped up. That was just really exciting, in the past few games. So we'll see what happens here for the Sixers. But I think this Paul George suspension, I think that he's going to come in later in the season fresh. Hopefully we're doing good. It's really just if we can perform when he's out. So Joel Embiid snubbed as an all-star. I believe he will be thrown in as a replacement for Giannis just because they're on the world side of the all-star thing. But 26.2 points per game. I don't really have to talk a lot about Joel Embiid. I've already talked about his rise back to his normal bout of playing. Sixers are 10-4 since he's played, since the minutes restriction has been lifted. But also at the same time, I almost don't want him to be added on to the all-star roster because this could be good rest for Embiid. He's actually been playing back-to-backs. He's actually been playing more games more frequently. So I think this could be good rest, and I'm not too worried about him playing, or I guess I'm not too worried about him not playing. Lastly, for the Sixers segment, there's just been a lot of trade talks about Giannis, and it's we have to bring it up. Please do not trade VJ Edgecombe to the Bucks for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Again, I spoke about this last week or the week before about how this really just it reminds me of the Kevin Durant trade rumors about how should we trade Tyrese Maxey and this and that for Kevin Durant. How it'll benefit us. We might get rid of a lot of our young talent, but it's just one of those things that I don't know how much it's worth it. Giannis would bring a lot of good deal to us, but how much would he fit in our system? How much would he fit alongside Maxey and Embiid? And he kind of has to have the ball in his hands and force things to happen. So please do not get rid of VJ. If you can snake a deal getting rid of other guys, then by all means try it, but I don't want to see a trade for Giannis that involves any of our main three of Maxey, VJ, and Embiid. And I would even go on to say Paul George for that, but obviously his contract hit. It would be something good to get rid of, but we'll see about that. We will see about that. So that's been the Phanatic segment. And now moving into our last segment of the pod, and that would be the Clemson Corner. There was a heartwarmer recently. I was working camera for Clemson Athletics in the past weekend, and we got to work on the camera crew of an amazing game, a Clemson women's basketball game against SMU, where we saw Rusneh Augustinate drop 21, a season high, in kind of her homecoming game of sorts. She went 8 for 15 on shooting, just lights out from three. And this came after a story that I recommend you all look up. Look up Clemson women's basketball Lithuania on Google, and you will get a video of Russ, the standout Lithuanian sharpshooter for us. Her mother came in from Lithuania in a surprise from Clemson teammates. In the 6 years that Russ has played basketball in America, her mother has yet to see her play, like in America. So it's not the first time she's seen her in 6 years, but it's the first time that she's seen her play in America. So there's just a video of all the girls are hanging out in, I guess, Rusneh's home or wherever she lives on campus. And she opens the door and it's her mom, and she starts crying and she starts hugging, and all the players are like clapping and stuff. This is a good use of NIL money, and this is just such a heartwarmer. And again, I really recommend you look up the video and you see what's going on there with that video, because that was really just a fun, little watch. And it really was a heartwarmer, especially with all like the bad talk about NIL, especially coming from me. But just with all the bad talk about NIL, this was a really good way to use that NIL money. So lastly, again, no basketball talk, no football talk here for Clemson. Let's talk about Clemson baseball. About to start up their 2026 season next weekend, and they're finding themselves in top 25 rankings all across the board. Number 17 in the coaches poll, number 20 in Baseball America's poll, number 19 in D1 Baseball's poll, number 20 in the Perfect Game poll. Again, they have yet to put out the AP poll officially for the season, but the Tigers look to catapult themselves off a 45-win season last year that landed them a hosted regional bracket in the first round of the tournament, which unfortunately went 1-2. But they're bringing back plenty of talent. Again, no Cam Cannarella, but they're bringing back catcher Jacob Jarrell, first baseman Lucas Gaffney, second baseman Jaron Purify, who actually I saw was ranked 9th best second baseman in the country by D1 Baseball. They're bringing back designated hitter Colin Priest, bringing back preseason All-American pitcher Aiden Knack, and reliever Drew Titsworth. So we're seeing a really stacked returning core for Clemson, a team that brought them to the NCAA tournament, brought them to host in the NCAA tournament. So, and not to mention, you're bringing a lot of transfers. Pitcher Arison Vesey, Michael Sharman, infielder Ty Daly, 2025 Sun Belt Freshman of the Year infielder Tyler Lichtenberger, not to mention D2 All-American pitcher Hayden Simerson, and they have their first series against Army in the next upcoming weekend. So please keep an eye out for Clemson baseball. They're going to be really good this year. They bring in a really good transfer portal cast, and they're bringing in a really good returning core. So I think there's something coming out of that Clemson baseball team. I think that's something that we all should watch. And I think that they're really going to make up for what football lost this year, especially, and basketball is doing great. Basketball is ranked, I think they're ranked, 18th now? Or 20th or 18th right now? I forgot to put their numbers in my notes, but they're still doing good. They have a really tough road stretch ahead of them against Stanford and Cal. The West Coast ACC opponents, BS, but that's been a tough stretch for other ACC teams. So who knows what's going to happen there? So basketball's on the rise, baseball's on the rise, and even women basketball is doing really good, especially with that Russ game. She is a sharpshooter. She's one of my comm classes, so that was just really cool to see. Someone that was in my class come out of nowhere and just go guns a-blazing on the court, especially in her game. Like, this was a game that the storyline was about her because of the whole mom thing, and it's like one of the only times that I've seen a player really deliver on like their own game, their own story game. It's really rare to see a player actually go out and do their thing, especially in college, after something like that. So maybe it was just the magic, but so that'll be all for the Pursuit pod this week. I know it's a little shorter than weeks past. I've really jam-packed the last few weeks, but the NBA trade deadline kind of overwhelmed and overtook everything, this week, I would say, and there wasn't really a lot in hockey notable besides the outdoor game. The sports world really just awaits on this Giannis trade, so I think that we have to just wait and see, but a lot of exciting stuff coming out. The trade deadline and the coaching cycles are like my favorite part of sports. I love seeing where everyone goes, and I love seeing the trade deadline, like what moves could happen. I love seeing the Sixers do nothing year to year, so that'll be definitely fun. So again, thank you all for watching this week of the Pursuit Pod. Again, I love you all. I love your support and all of you for just helping me and supporting me through everything. And I guess I'll just end it here. So as usual, go Tigers, go Sixers, go Flyers, go Birds. They finally have their coaches, and I will see you all in the next episode next week. Have a good week.